highlighting history of suburban Sydney with the St Peter's Cooks River History Group.
Our aim is to preserve and promote local history.
We are based at St Peter's in Sydney's inner west.
The Ryde district was the third area of European settlement in New South Wales. It was originally known by its Aboriginal name, Wallamatta.
In 1792, land along the northern bank of the Parramatta River was granted to 8 Marines. Governor Phillip named it the Field of Mars, reflecting a military association with the new settlers.
In the same year, land east of the Marines, called Eastern Farms, was granted to emancipated convicts.
The area became known as Kissing Point, believed to have originated from the way in which heavily laden boats passing up the river bumped or kissed the shallow bottom as they rounded a particular point.
James Stewart erected a 3-bedroom sandstone cottage on his land grant in 1794. The farm was purchased by James Shepherd in 1809. Later additions were a western wing of 2 bedrooms, a veranda, an eastern wing of 3 rooms, followed by a ballroom. Today, Addington on Victoria Road is the oldest surviving building in Ryde.
The retreat, next door to Addington, was built by Shepherd in 1843.
In 1798, James Squire, an entrepreneurial ex-convict, purchased many of the Eastern Farm land grants. He grew hops on his 1,000-acre farm and established the first brewery in the settlement. On the foreshore, adjacent to his wharf, was the Malting Shovel, the first brewery and public house in the colony, a popular ferry stop. Today, James Squire's name lives on in a range of craft beer.
Bennelong, a senior man of the Eora people, often wandered onto Squire's property and was befriended by him. When Bennelong died, he was buried in the orchard. A monument has been erected in Cleves Park near the burial site.
The district was an important supplier of fresh food. Fruit, vegetables, poultry, maize and pigs produced at Kissing Point were sent to the Sydney markets.
In 1804, a large area of public land, the Field of Mars Common, was set aside for local inhabitants to graze their cattle.
The establishment of St Anne's Anglican Church in 1826-27, on a ridge overlooking the river, provided a focal point for the development of the village. It was initially known as the Kissing Point Church. The original sandstone chapel schoolhouse is now the church nave. 1860s additions were a tower, chancel and small vestry.
The area gained a reputation for fruit growing. Some orchardists specialised in fruit varieties of their own raising. Maria Smith propagated a chance apple seedling on her property and found the apples good for cooking and general consumption. This led to the development of the Granny Smith apple, which is now famous around the world. The grave of Thomas and Maria Smith is in the graveyard at St Anne's Church.
The police station, reputed to be the oldest police building still in use in New South Wales, was built in 1837-38 on the main road to Parramatta.
John Blaxland, son of the explorer Gregory Blaxland, purchased 5 acres of land and completed a house in 1841. The house was named the Hermitage, as he was known within his family as the Hermit. In 1952, it became a CSIRO wool research laboratory. It remained in Commonwealth hands until 1999. The house and gardens are now privately owned.
Willandra was built by James Devlin in the 1840s. It has been a family home, private girls' school, garage and motor trimming business. Now owned by the City of Ryde, it has been restored and conserved for the community.
By 1841, a new name was emerging for the district, Ryde, derived from Ryde on the Isle of Wight. Ryde in England was the birthplace of Mary Turner, the wife of the Vicar of St Anne's, and also George Pope, who owned the Ryde store and was Kissing Point's first postmaster.
A plan prepared for auction was titled Plan of the Village of Ryde, Kissing Point, New South Wales.
An advertisement in the Sydney Herald told prospective buyers that they would be delighted by the pretty little church. There was an excellent school for the education of children and a police establishment for the protection of property, and Mr. Manning's beautiful steamboats went by 4 times a day on the Parramatta River.
In close proximity to St Anne's, a courthouse was built in 1863. When a new courthouse was erected in 1922 on Victoria Road, the old one became part of the church. Adjacent to the old courthouse was a post office and the home of Postmaster George Pope.
A Wesleyan church opened in 1849. A new church building was erected in 1870.
An Oddfellows Hall, which opened in 1869 next to the church, is now part of the church complex.
Nurse McPhail's cottage in Church Street was built by Francis Wilson around 1856. His daughter Sarah, known as Nurse McPhail, served as a midwife in the district for 50 years.
St Charles Borromeo, built in 1857, was the first Catholic church in Ryde. In 1858, a Roman Catholic schoolhouse was opened. When the present church was built in 1934, the porch, belfry, front door of the old church, and much of the original stone was reused.
In 1862, the Strict and Particular Baptists erected a stone chapel on the main road. It still stands in the Squireville complex. The present Ebenezer Strict and Particular Baptist Church is on the corner of Hatton Street and Blacksland Road.
The first public wharf to be built in Ryde was completed in 1863. Ferry services took passengers to and from Sydney or Parramatta.
Activity around Ryde Wharf declined in the 1880s with the opening of the first Gladesville Bridge and the Strathfield to Hornsby railway line. Freight stations were at Ryde, now West Ryde, Dundas, today Eastwood, and Field of Mars, now Epping.
A public school was established in 1868 on the corner of Blacksland Road and Tucker Street. It was relocated to a single-storey building on the current site in 1877. A 2-storey building was erected in 1892.
James Farnell, Squire's grandson and Premier of New South Wales, built Squireville. In 1889, his property was sold to the Catholic Church. A girls' orphanage opened there in 1904. Squireville was used as a convent until 1979 and then served as a conference centre. When the site was sold to Meriton, the house was transformed into 2 apartments.
Wimmala was built as a private home in 1885 by Sir Henry Moses. In 1906, he sold it to Susan Shard for a home for incurables. Miss Shard recognised the needs of patients being discharged from hospital and labelled as incurable, meaning without family, money or hope of getting a job. The name changed to Royal Ryde Homes, Royal Ryde Rehabilitation Hospital and then the Royal Rehabilitation Centre.
The parsonage, a residence for the Wesleyan minister, was first occupied in 1885. With the development of Devlin Street as a major transport link, the road was realigned. Today, the building is in an elevated position above Devlin Street. Now owned by Ryde Council, the property is accessible from Turner Street.
Adjacent to it is Westwood, an 1840s workman's cottage.
Sale of the Field of Mars Common began in 1885. It was subdivided into allotments. Several plots of land reserved as community areas included the Field of Mars Cemetery and the Field of Mars Reserve.
This area's first school, which opened in 1878, now houses the New South Wales Schoolhouse Museum of Public Education. The School of Arts on Cox Road became the centre of entertainment for the local community. The area's market gardens and poultry farms remained until the 1930s.
The following decades saw residential and commercial expansion.
The establishment of Macquarie University, the Macquarie Shopping Centre, and the introduction of business parks. Network 10 had its headquarters and television production studios at North Ryde. The site now occupied by North Ryde Railway Station and an apartment tower.
The Honourable Thomas Dalton gave the Catholic Church 27 acres of land and built a two-storey villa to establish a place to care for women who suffered from mental and nervous disorders. The foundation stone of Mount St Margaret Hospital was laid in 1891. The Little Company of Mary's Sisters established the facility. The first patient was received in 1894. After nearly 100 years, the licence as a private psychiatric hospital was surrendered and the current retirement community established. Today it is part of Dalton Gardens Retirement Village.
In 1892, the Ryde pumping station was built at West Ryde. The present station was built on adjacent land. The old station ceased operating in 1930 and was later demolished.
A punt commenced from Rhodes to Ryde in 1896. The service continued until the opening of the Ryde Bridge in 1935. A second parallel bridge opened in 1988.
The Queen Victoria Jubilee Fountain, unveiled in 1897 to commemorate the 60th anniversary of the reign of Queen Victoria, was originally at the intersection of Church Street and Victoria Road. It now stands on the corner of Blaxland and Victoria Roads.
Holy Cross College was built in 1898 by the Patrician brothers on land purchased from the James Squires Farnell estate. The college had originally opened opposite at St Charles's Villa.
Henry Smith built the 20-room mansion, Curzon Hall, in the 1890s. It is now a venue for social functions and conferences.
Smith, an entrepreneur, foresaw a future for tourism at Ryde. In 1904, he bought land on the edge of the village, subdivided the greater portion, and reserved a large block where he began building a tourist resort, the Hampton Court Tourist Residential. It was to be a 5-storey structure with 70 bedrooms, billiard rooms, spacious cellars, and a turret tower of 2 further stories. He also envisaged extensive picnic grounds across Hatton's Flat. Smith died in 1913, leaving Hampton Court unfinished. It was demolished. In 1957, the Top Ryde shopping centre was established near the site. That centre was demolished and replaced by Top Ryde City.
Ryde Village, from the 1880s until the turn of the century, centred on Glebe Street, today Victoria Road, and Church Street, with a few shops established in Park Street, now Blaxland Road. In the first decade of the 20th century, Park Street emerged as the main commercial street. A town hall was erected in 1903, an additional building was later constructed.
Diagonally opposite, a new post office was built in 1907, replaced in 1967.
A School of Arts and Masonic Temple were constructed. The Ryde School of Arts, located at the corner of Parks and Devlin Streets, was opened in 1905. It was demolished in the 1960s to allow for the widening of Devlin Street. A remnant wall can still be seen parallel to the eastern side of the Masonic Temple.
A horse-drawn bus carried passengers from the tram terminus at Drummoyne to Ryde prior to the extension of the tramway.
A monument was unveiled at the intersection of Church Street and Blaxland Road to commemorate the first turning of the sod for the tramway extension. The line opened in 1910. The tram terminus was at the western end of Blaxland Road. In 1914, a single tram line was added between Ryde Post Office and West Ryde Railway Station. The Sydney to Ryde service was popular at weekends when Sydney residents would travel to the orchards in the district to buy produce. The monument was moved at various times until 2019, when it was relocated as close as possible to its original position. The tram line from Sydney to West Ryde Station was the longest one in the Sydney system.
Recreation on the Parramatta River included swimming and rowing. Regattas were held from 1847.
Shipbuilding industries developed at Kissing Point.
Sidney Kidman and Joseph Mayo leased part of the Cleves estate for a shipyard. Included in the lease was a large stone house called Cleves, built in the 1840s and for many years the home of Charles Blackland.
Halverson's boat building on the Squires side was a servicing and repair facility from the 1930s.
The Slazenger Company had ventured into shipbuilding. In 1943, they leased 6 acres of waterfront land. Adapting the techniques of laminating wood used in making tennis rackets, they built hulls for a variety of small boats.
The cinema came to Ryde in 1910. Next door to his Ryde Boot Palace, bootmaker Charles Starr ran the Ryde Picture Palace, an open-air theatre with a Wonderlick pressed metal facade.
In 1924, the Theatre Royal opened in West Ryde on the corner of Anthony Road and West Parade.
Near the tram terminus, a cinema called the Rialto opened in December 1932.
The Argyle Centre was previously the 1926 Palace, then Ritz Theatre. Ryde City Council purchased the premises in 1972 for use as a community centre.
The 1938 Khartoum was known locally as the Shack. The building housing the entrance and projection booth was made of timber and corrugated iron. It had a partial roof, but most of the seating was in the open. Entertainment at interval might be a wood chopping contest. If heat was needed, fires were started in 44-gallon drums. It closed in 1966.
The North Ryde Skyline Drive-In was on the site of a former orchard on the southeast corner of Lane Cove and Waterloo Roads. It operated between 1956 and 1986.
The House of David, a religious group, moved to North Ryde in 1917. Their headquarters, Eden Park, was located on 20 acres of land on the northeast corner of Lane Cove Road and Waterloo Road. They operated a sawmill and cleared land for market gardens and a poultry farm. In the 1930s, when their timber business closed, the property was opened to the public as Eden Park Picnic Grounds. The grounds included a shop for selling produce from the farm, a small native zoo, tennis courts, and a music bowl for concerts. Eden Park Picnic Grounds survived until the 1960s.
Many market gardens were operated by Chinese on land leased from locals and absentee landlords. By 1928, there were over 60 market gardens. This number declined during the 1930s. Population and other land use pressures saw the market garden sites redeveloped.
During World War II, an army base was located in North Ryde. After the war, the huts, previously used by the army on the southern side of Blenheim Road, were utilised as a migrant hostel and for Australian families in urgent need of accommodation.
Ryde Swimming Centre, consisting of 5 pools, was officially opened in 1961. The swimming centre was replaced in 2000 by the Ryde Aquatic Leisure Centre, the venue for the Sydney Olympics water polo events.
Ryde Civic Centre opened in 1964. It was extended to include a civic hall. In 2019, the council approved the redevelopment of the site as the new heart of Ryde. The civic centre and hall were demolished to make way for the new complex.
Today, Ryde is a busy commercial business and residential district. Along the eastern side of Church Street, artworks representing significant pioneers remind us of the area's past.
If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to our channel. It's free. Coming soon, Cronulla, beachside suburb of southern Sydney. And check out our website, stpeterscooksriverhistory.wordpress.com.